Welcome to Fintech Impact. I'm your host, Jason Pereira. Today I show Rick Scruggs. Rick is the CEO and founder of Financial Designs. It is a business that specifically targets servicing family business owners and professionals. And Rick has been at this for over 40 years. And I brought him on the show to have a practical discussion about how a successful advisor scales their practice, not just around, specifically first and foremost, around the value proposition and what they are doing for clients, but then how they use technology to enable the delivery of that vision. And with that, here's my interview with Rick. Rick, thanks for taking the time today.
Jason, glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
So, Rick Scruggs, tell us about what it is you do.
So, Jason, we work with ambitious entrepreneurs who want to take massive action to build a more abundant future for themselves, their employees, their community, and most important, have the time to enjoy it.
Okay. So in our pre-call, we discussed this, but basically most financial advisors are going to tell you they deal with business owners. But the difference is that there's a set group of people who actually very much walk the walk and talk the talk of that. And you've been at this for a long time. So we're going to let you demonstrate how we're going to prove to everybody that this is the case just through your story, because your story was fantastic. So talk to me about how it is you got started in business and built what you built.
Jason, I was a freshman in college, and my father died on Christmas Eve morning. And he was a young man at age 58, a World War II vet. And what I realized is that I was able to go back to school. I didn't have to borrow any money. My mother was able to maintain the house. She was a librarian. She kept working until she retired. And however, it took about 2 or 3 more years before I really understood the impact of financial integrity, having goals, and that you do have to take action in your life if you want to have a bigger, better future.
Yeah. Whoever was advising your father and your father as well, incredible, commendable thing for having their affairs in order such that when, God forbid, and God took them from this earth quickly or early, the family that was left behind was intact. Rick, I'm sure you've seen it a million times, and I've seen it a million times too, where that is not the case. And that makes a bad situation worse, unfortunately.
I think, Jason, we all have to realize mortality is still 100%. We're all here for a very short visit on the blue planet.
Yep.
Hopefully it's the 85 plus timeline, but that may not be true for everybody. So we have to make a conscious choice how we're going to live this time. Are we going to be a go-giver? Are we going to make a difference? Are we going to impact the quality of life? And the reason why we love private and family business owners is because we do believe they impact the quality of life in the communities where they exist with their employees. They provide payroll and benefits and philanthropy and giving. They're actually philanthropists every day with the employees they have on board, but they're lonely.
Totally. So let's talk about your journey into that market and what led you to that. So talk to me about your early career and then how eventually you basically ended up starting your own business.
So I met a gentleman right before graduation. His name was Chief Nesbitt, and he was a larger than life individual. He was bold and unafraid, and he had a knack for asking just incredibly insightful questions because he said, I can't help people if I can't make them think. But I have to preface it by saying, don't get upset with me by the questions I'm going to ask you, because if I can't help you think, no one's going to benefit from this relationship. And he asked me a crucial question, which was I coachable? And I answered immediately and said yes. Not sure I knew what I was answering yes to. And he gave me a book at the end of the day when he made a decision to hire for the first time somebody under the age of 35. I was 22 at the time. And he had a team, and that was attractive to me. But the book, I went home, I read it. I called him the next morning. I said, that book was remarkably. So what do you mean? I said, page 18, page 66, page 138. He said, you read the book? I said, yes, sir. You told me to read the book. He said, you come to my house tomorrow for lunch. And that day changed my life and the trajectory. And he explained that if I went after the business market, these were lonely people, but they were available from 5 a.m. till probably 10 p.m., 5, 6, 7 days a week if you wanted to work that hard. And he would call me at 5:30 in the morning and say, how was my goal setting going for the day? That was pretty unusual for me at 22 to be waking up at 5:30 in the morning. But I realized that's what ambitious, future-focused people do.
The price of success. It's funny. It reminds me of a story of, I think it was Arnold Palmer, where someone once said, man, I wish I could swing a golf club like you do. And he said he was having a bad day and said, no, you don't. He's like, what are you talking about? I'd love to be able to golf your way. He's, really? You want to stand out in the rain practicing your swing because you can't get this little slice out of it and do that for 3 hours? You want to keep swinging until your hands are cracked and bleeding on a weekly basis because you need to fix whatever problem is there? And it was one of these things of like, yes, we all want the success, but the cost of it is something that unless you've walked that journey, most people don't realize. And this is one thing that leads to so many business owners networking together, is that they all walk that journey and they get what it's like and the challenges and how lonely it is. All right. So you identify this need, and these people who were needed attention in particular, because again, they're generating business, they're making money, they're doing all this stuff, but their affairs are not necessarily in order themselves, right?
No, their house is not in good order. And the reason for that is because the professional advisors, the smart CPAs, attorneys, bankers, investment people operate in silos, and silos have no windows. Mm-hmm. And so it's very difficult to get collaborative advice. So our role is to get a seat at the table. And I discovered even at 22, if you call on a business owner at 6 a.m., his CPA and attorney aren't making that same phone call. So you could get a seat at the table. You could get there before the gatekeepers, and you could have this open, honest conversation. And I discovered quickly that as long as the business owner was talking 90% of the time, and I was listening 10%, the more they talked, the smarter they thought I was. And there's always two experts in the room, but I want to always acknowledge my business owner client as that expert.
Yep. Actually, there's a behavioral understanding in psychology. I think it's the more time someone spends talking about themselves, the more likely they are to like you. Which is
right. Yeah, I think Bob Cialdini talks about that in Influence, that the laws of reciprocity and liking. And it's, Jason, these men and women who run these businesses and hire people and provide a livelihood, they want the help. They just don't know who to trust.
Yeah.
And so we have to be willing to break down those barriers. And as Warren Buffett said, help them build a moat around their castle that's wide and deep, and then give them the clicker that allows them to raise and lower the drawbridge every night and every morning.
Excellent. It's early on, it's a behavior, right? Like they start off, they're doing everything, right? And they're doing everything for the business and for themselves. And as that business grows in complexity, they eventually hire people within to deal with the immediate concerns, but they don't necessarily, and then they hire who they think, the accountant, whatever else, but then they're still the focal point. They're still the breaking point where so much of this information has to come to them, and they're making decisions on things they don't fully understand, right? So replacing them at the nexus of that conversation, or being the bridge to those professionals and getting that windowed view, incredibly valuable. So you've been at this for quite a while, and you've scaled this business doing that. Now, what would you say are the key value propositions that you bring to the table, besides the collaboration piece, to these people that really resonate?
When you realize that most entrepreneurs, as Michael Gerber said, they have an entrepreneurial seizure on Friday night. They go home, tell their spouse, I've quit my job, I'm going into business tomorrow. And they're going to exchange working 40 hours a week for somebody else to working 80 hours plus for themselves. You have to have an incredible but simple value proposition, which is that you can ask them questions that are designed to make them think, like Chief said. So one of my questions, I need to understand a little bit about their business, but I can say, so last year you did 20 million in revenue. And they'll say 18. It doesn't make any difference. And I said, if you did that for a decade times 10, that would be 200 million. And then I say, and so on 18 million, did you make $1.2 million profit? And they go, yeah, that's pretty close. So over the next decade times 10, that's 10 million. Are those big numbers to you? And they realize they've never done that multiplication.
Yeah.
And then the question is, who does that impact? Your family, your spouse, your children, your community, your church, synagogue? And does that matter? Do you want to keep this conversation going? So you're not talking about solutions. You're not talking about product. You're talking about how big is their thinking? Because business owners only want to solve big problems. And I can't be the one to define the big problem. They have to identify it through hopefully that crucial conversation about taking time to think, which is something people are doing less of today because of all the complexity and the noise.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I like how you change perspective there because everybody's always concerned about the immediate year, the immediate quarter, whatever else it is. But getting them to zoom out and looking at the lifetime earnings, which is a valuable exercise for anyone to do in terms of human capital, but for a business, it's a different level. And then getting them to think about where all that's going, the allocation of that. As you said, you started talking about community, you started talking about family, you started talking about mentally getting them thinking about what buckets are going to be served by that flow of income. So it's a wonderful way of getting them to, I'm sure, like most business owners, a lot of them will think, I need to get to X dollars and then I'll be comfortable, I'll be fine. And that number always keeps on increasing.
Always keeps going.
Just keeps on going. But changing the perspective of, look, just do what you do. And this is the pot. How do you want to start allocating that pot? Moves decisions from after that point to potentially to today. And that's a really great reframing.
Yeah, so we use an analogy and I use a schematic because I think it's helpful to give people pictures because they can quickly grasp what the concept is you're trying to share. And it's a jigsaw puzzle. And the jigsaw puzzle, all the pieces have an item on there, sub S or retained earnings or key employees or lines of credit, et cetera. But if you try to put together a jigsaw puzzle without the cover and what the picture's supposed to look like, it's hard to assemble the pieces. And that's why great businesses, are built on teams of key employees who fulfill strategic roles. And one of the things we've discovered is when we ask the owner, would you mind sharing a copy of your strategic written business plan and the audit reports you got from all your advisors in 2023? And they look at you like you've got 8 heads because nobody's delivering that report or that information to them, much less asking, can we find out from your key people, are they in alignment with your mission, vision, purpose, and goals? So these are the crucial conversations, Jason.
That makes sense. And frankly, it's one of those things where when you know what big businesses or big companies do, they have those things, but graduating from the point where you are just trying to stay alive to basically having a mature business, that sort of shift in thinking and almost professionalization of the business is something that takes someone else to almost come in and say, you gotta mature, you gotta grow up you gotta go to the next level. Because you're not going to be able to truly understand where this can go unless you do those things. So it makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about, again, this is a fintech podcast first and foremost.
Sure.
But here's what I like. One of the things I like to say about technology. At the end of the day, technology is not a strategy. Technology is there to enable your strategy. And I think this is why having these kinds of conversations from time to time is very powerful because it gets away from the bells and whistles and the trends and everything else. So talk to me about the role the technology has played in your business over the years in delivering value to your clients.
I don't have a master's degree, but I have a PhD in mistakes. And so I've probably got a couple that I could hang on the wall. What I've discovered is that private and family businesses are the 4th largest asset class in the U.S. economy. They've supplied over 50% of all the jobs in the economy. And the majority of them are owned by people over the age of 55, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 million of these companies. And most of them have not done the planning to transition or exit. Now, I like to use the analogy, you're either going to exit 10 toes up or 10 toes down. And it's your choice. The idea of technology and its impact for their businesses, they've all computerized. They all have lasers. They all have robotics. They all have these automated systems. Some of them operate 24/7 lights out operations. And yet they don't have the time to dive into all the technology. So we are coming in with all these fancy reports and all these grant diagrams and schematics, et cetera. That's a big mistake. Nobody wants to read a 50-page report. What they want to know is that the information you're providing them or the technology you're utilizing is sound, it's certified, it's reliable, and that we tell people, whatever we're going to give you, Mr. Business Owner, Mrs. Business Owner, you can share with your entire advisory team. We're that confident that the information we're going to put together using technology, using systems like Advisor Stream, Value Compass, Asset Map, eMoney, all these different tools out there, they're great tools. But as somebody once said, nobody goes to Ace Hardware to buy a drill because they want to drill. They just don't want a hole. They want a 1/8 inch hole. So that's how we have to apply technology. And of course, AI is now just roaring, and yet it's still overwhelming for most business owners that we're engaged with.
Yep. And it's, again, going back to my point about it's not a strategy. It's there to support the strategy. I think too often, we'll sidetrack for a sec, too often the industry is just fascinated by selling the drill, right? It's product sales, right? But at the end of the day, no one really cares what product you're selling them. Maybe they have a feeling about it based off what they've read or heard. But at the end of the day, what they're really saying is fundamentally, am I going to be okay? Am I going to make the most of my business? Am I going to make the most of my opportunity? Am I going to help the people I want to help? Am I going to do all that? So basically, it takes a shift in thinking around people to stop doing that. Unfortunately, not everybody's good at that, but fortunate for those who succeeded, they are. In general, okay, so you've created this apparatus. You've got, how big is your team? How big is the company you're working in these days?
We have 12 employees internally, and then we have 2 1099 relationships to serve us in marketing and some of our other enterprises. And then we have different pods of advisors who specialize in business valuation potentially, or tax work, or CPAs, et cetera. Because again, great heart surgeon without a great anesthesiologist, you may not get off the table.
Got that right. So effectively, you basically use technology predominantly as a client-facing tool to work across these segments as well. So how has that enabled you to collaborate with these different pods of advisors that you've talked about?
So one of the pieces of technology called Value Compass was designed for an advisor to ask a business owner 18 questions in less than 20 minutes. Couldn't do it in less than 20 minutes, don't use the technology. And what's great about it is it gives the owner a valuation number. It's not certified, but it gives them a number, tells them how much money they're leaving on the table. It identifies gaps, and those gaps are the ones that are preventing them from getting full value for their enterprise. And we've done over 150 of those, and we've never had an owner say, I don't like that number. They don't like the number. They
never like the number.
Yeah. They didn't like the report. And if you're talking to people who want to continue to grow, because if you don't grow, you're going to go out of business. There's no way just to status quo anymore. And then you can let their key people do the same 18 questions, and that creates something called an align report. What the owner quickly realizes, they may not have been doing this great job of communicating mission, vision, purpose, and goals. They're not holding crucial conversations where the stakes are high. There's an emotional charge and opposing views. People would much rather talk about certain aspects of their life than talk about money. But yet public companies do it all the time. Proxies reveal age, income, benefits, et cetera. So we try to break that wall down for the owner to say, let's embrace this. Let's use the tools and technology that will get you to where you want to go.
Excellent. Now, so I love the fact that it not only tells them that their baby's not as pretty as they think it is, because that's every business owner, it also at the same time gets their employees in the loop, talking about why it's not as pretty. And agreed, no one ever likes the number. They always think it's worth more. But that said, giving them metrics and telling where the gaps are so that they can help get the number to where they want it to be. Hey, these are business owners who are used to chasing numbers or are used to basically focusing on that. So it's not surprising that if you do that, it's a powerful motivator for getting them to actually enact change versus just hoping for the best.
Nassim Taleb has written 4 wonderful books: Skin in the Game, Don't Listen to People Who Don't Have Skin in the Game, Anti-Fragile, Black Swans, and Fooled by Randomness. But he talks about anti-fragile. People say, I'm resilient, I can survive. But in today's world, you have to be able to not only take the blow, but you've got to be able to grow. So I think when you can have these kind of crucial conversations with entrepreneurs, then the products and the tools are less, they're just less relevant. They now see you as a kindred spirit business owner. We don't call ourselves a practice. We are a firm. We are a business because business owners want to do business with other business owners.
Exactly. And as a business owner, you understand their life, you understand the struggles they go to. You're like-minded, and you can commiserate and share in those same struggles because you've been there. So that's where you are today. Talk to me about where you see the business going, and then we can talk about how technology can play a role in that. But by all means, kick it off.
So we serve close to 75 private and family businesses. We've impacted over 100. We've got, that represents a little over 4,000 employees. So we're looking for those owners who also want to impact the quality of life of their employees. So we're in the qualified retirement plan space of 401ks. We help the employees with their benefits. It's the wills and trusts, making sure, because we do live in a capitalist system, says you better have your I's dotted and T's crossed. Yep. We've got a huge tax law change sunsetting December 25th of next year, December 30th, 31st of 2025. So it's this idea of teams win games, and also strong defenses win games. Got to have good offense, but you better have a great defense. And when things changed, when COVID hit and everybody thought the world was coming to an end, you had to be the voice to say, you can't have the strongest economy in the world with the lowest unemployment, lowest interest rates. We're not going to go over the cliff. If the big man upstairs decides to pull the plug, he's not calling you or me. No. I think we're going to come through this. It may be ugly, but we will get through this. Let's be clear about the vocabulary we're using, the words we're saying, and let's keep talking about the gain of the future and not fall into the gap.
Agreed. And then we're going to finish up with, let's talk about how technology can enable you going forward. What do you see that is interesting to you that you think is going to basically help enable you to further service this client base?
A couple things. We think that the investment world has actually gotten commoditized in fee compression. We think that the younger team members we're bringing on, that we've recently hired 25, 31, 35, they like these relationships, but they need mentoring. So where we're going is we want to grow our own 10X, and we want to continue to serve these private and family business owners. Zoom has allowed us to do business now anywhere in the country. We can tie in their other advisors. So the key to our success is obviously client retention with the best clients. Some relationships just end, Jason, and you have to part ways. Mm-hmm. But if you can serve with more than 2 or 3 lines of business with a client, because we're not a philanthropic organization. We are a for-profit. We're big advocates of capitalism. We think it's the best system out there. However, we have to recruit more people to serve these business owners so they don't feel like they're on a lonely island.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
We've got the AI. We use Advisor Stream. We send out a newsletter every Friday to over 4,000 people that has no advertisement, no pitches, and it's telling them, here are the top articles that are being read. People do not want to get bombarded by crap.
That's for sure. That's for sure. There's more than enough of that out there, especially in our inboxes. So before we wrap up, there's 3 questions I ask everybody to end on a positive note and get you thinking. And the first one I have for you is, if you had one wish for something to change in your company or the industry as a whole, what would it be?
Thank you for the question. It's to be in the leadership role where I make sure that the mission, vision, and purpose of our organization is clearly understood by our team members. However, I have to add the question, am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? General McChrystal wrote that in a great book on leadership that I just finished reading. So that would be number one, is I've got the years of experience. My role now is to mentor, but make sure I'm not part of the problem.
Absolutely. Too often we can be our own worst enemies, quite honestly. And it's especially having the right team around you to gut check that is incredibly invaluable. The second question I have for you is, what's been the biggest challenge in getting to where you are today?
Sometimes my own thinking. That's why I wrote a book called What's Wrong with My Thinking. It was to examine what were those things, because it's usually just between our ears.
Yeah.
And it's not being bold and unafraid. We have to demonstrate courage each day. And so that has been the one aspect. And I can't tell you why, Jason, I think the way I think. I've examined it, but I realized it's because of wonderful people, great books, people willing to ask me those tough questions.
Absolutely. So it's, again, back to the theme of getting in our own way. It's so true. And the last question for you is, what excites you the most about what it is you're working on and keeps you getting out of bed and to fight the good fight?
It's seeing people achieve their dreams and seeing them come to fruition, because everybody's going to have stop, start, continue. And we want to be there. We want to be what's called the first call. We want our clients, business owners, to understand that they or their key people or their employees can call our organization. They're not going to get an email return unless it's appropriate. We're going to respond within 24 hours. It's just, I love David Berg's comment, go-givers sell more. Go-givers have a bigger contribution to make in life. And one of my great clients once said, he turned his organization around from losing $250 million a year to making. He was a very unusual guy. So I said, Jack, you must have done a 180. He said, Rick, all we did is move our direction 2 degrees. And I let the people who knew how to do their jobs do them, and I supported them. Mm-hmm. And so it's not something dramatic, but you can't fall asleep at the switch. And you need to know when to take a break. And remember, enjoy the time you have, because when you lose your mental faculties or you lose your physical mobility, which nobody has a crystal ball to show, then it can be over and out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So well stated. And I will come back and say that this industry's greatest privilege is watching those we serve succeed, because at the end of the day, that's really what we're here for. So, Rick, thank you so much for the conversation. Very much appreciate it.
Jason, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
So that was Rick. So that was my interview with Rick Scruggs of Financial Designs. I hope you enjoyed that. And again, this is not specifically a tech first call. Every now and then we do like to zoom out and talk about strategy and how to deploy versus just worrying about the doodads that we get caught up in. As always, if you enjoy this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever it is you get your podcasts. Until next time, take care.
This podcast was brought to you by Woodgate Financial, an award-winning financial planning firm catering to high net worth individuals and their families. To learn more, go to woodgate.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, or find more episodes at jasonpereira.ca.